GM fam, I'm so excited that the Curve stablecoin repository is finally released because now we can comb through the GitHub and try and look at some of the more interesting facets because there's a lot to unpack. So one thing to note is that there is still a lot of work going on. Just 2 days ago, Mitch made a couple of changes about checking the monetary policy rate readability. Even though the repository is basically 95% perhaps done, there's still a lot of testing once the proposed final draft of the smart contract is there. And this is where Curve extensively utilizes tests. Particularly when you're dealing with smart contract development, you have to do an extensive variety of tests in order to make sure that all kind of possible weird edge cases and use cases are considered. Traditionally, Curve had done this using Brownie, but this is, as far as I know, a very first in terms of development in which primarily the tests have been written using Titanoboa. We've talked about Titanoboa a few times. It's this native Viper interpreter, which works directly within Python. As a result, you can kind of compile and test Viper code very, very fast and do it natively in memory. This opens up a bunch of tremendous possibilities. So these tests initially started being written using Brownie, and over time it got migrated towards Titanoboa. Again, I think this is the first time it's ever been done. And in today's article, we walk through how exactly this took place and what some of the ways that this was accomplished were. But you can notice it's a fairly light footprint. Instead of importing Brownie as we might normally, we're importing Titanoboa, and then otherwise using PyTest for the bulk of this, because PyTest is already a robust and mature suite. Within Boa, we were able to get this off the ground by just running a couple of parameters up, commands up top. And then some of the things that are native, for example, Brownie, as well as most testing suites, will be able to pull in a list of addresses because you're actually firing up a local, like, Ganache instance. But in this case, it's actually just generating them natively. So these actually take the form of like 0000001, 2, 3, 4, because they're being created from scratch like that when you generate addresses. And then it's kind of partially or completely loading these contracts and deploying these into kind of active working memory. And then returning these with which we're able to work. And you'll notice this boa.env.prank. Within Titanoboa, nearly everything is done through this environment, which essentially just stores the most recent contracts loaded into its working memory in this environment variable. And then from this, kind of within this, with boa.env.prank block, by indenting it, it means that everything that's executed within this will be executed as the user that's being passed here. In this case, an admin user. But then you could prank, aka kind of like masquerade as, play a practical joke from this identity, spoof the thing into thinking you're this user. You could do that with almost anything. One other common feature within the tests, let's see if I can find it real quick. We test and create repaying here. Notice this boa.env.anchor. Within this, we also indent this, and any of the code that's created within this is executed within this anchor. What the anchor does is it just basically casts an anchor at that state. It says this is the current state of this kind of in-memory working blockchain. Then we run through and run all these other commands, in this case pranking as this user and running all this all this shenanigans around creating a loan. And then when we're done, we revert to the state as it was at this anchor. So a couple of built-in functions into Boa that made it pretty easy to replicate and kind of build out this testing suite. We don't know if that's the future direction of Titanoboa or whatnot, but it's just really cool to see that with this really advanced math that had to be done to get crvUSD off the ground, that Titanoboa was ready to be doing this in production and hopefully going to be responsible for securing all your code, so hopefully functioning without bugs. Be interested in hearing your thoughts on this. Drop them in the comments, and we will catch you soon.